It's even here. So we will spend the morning at Loftet with 4 different speakers that we're really happy to have here today. And then we'll spend the lunch and afternoon at Alnarp's agroecology farm. And I will explain that later, so we're all on the same page. And lastly, I just want to say on behalf of all the agroecology students planning this day, that all parts of this day, from the speakers to the venues to the food and our collaboration partners, we have carefully thought out for them to be in line with the theme of the day, from research to practice. And we want this day to be a day full of inspiration, but also hope, and to show that a different food system is possible. Without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker, Leon Bucher. Is that Bucher your name or Bucher?
Correct. What for my name?
Yeah. He's a holistic management trainer and coach, specializing in regenerative farming and ecological monitoring. He trains farmers across Europe in holistic management and grazing, focusing on ecological monitoring and ecological outcome verification to assess and improve ecosystem health. Leo's approach integrates systems thinking and sustainable processes to help farmers make decisions that support land regeneration and ecosystem vitality. For his speech, Leon will explore the practical application of in-field ecological monitoring and how this is valuable for farmers. And so welcome up.
Thank you. Normally speak with hands, but maybe this will help me to not speak too much with hands.
Yep.
Really? Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. Technology. One of my favorite things to talk about in different contexts, in why we hold on to technology so much that we're so afraid of letting go. But that's another speech or for another time or another conversation over Kika, whenever you can read. I'm trying to do a practical view in what I'm Q&A. But if in between you feel like, wait, there is something I really, really need to clarify right now, please show up and be like, hey, can we just stay with this for a minute? But we'll make it work. Before we start, that's not the one. Okay. So, before we go into slides and things, I would like you to think back and a moment in your life where you were a kid or a teenager, or maybe just last week, maybe last summer, and you were going around the field, maybe at your grandparents' house, maybe at your family's garden, maybe in a summer camp, and you were going through these fields, and you were just feeling life, and you just had this buzzing of insects. You saw this variety, and you as a kid, you might have not known names of plants or anything, but it didn't matter because you were playing, you were running, and you were feeling this aliveness. And some of you might have been, oh, it was not a meadow, it was actually a forest. And I stepped into this forest and felt this aliveness. And each of us has a different picture coming up now. maybe. The moment of when we felt regeneration with every sense and not even putting a name onto it. And then when we got older, we still have this memory and we still like trying to tell someone how beautiful it was that summer day at the grandparents' house that was by the lake, and you had you could see all the fish and everything being alive. And then at some point, someone else comes and like, can we measure this aliveness? We put a number onto it. But I'm coming back always to this moment where my parents took me these weekends where I felt like, why do we have to do this? Where you have to go on a walk, like made no sense because there was no destination. It was just getting around. But the aliveness that was there, the playing around, the running in the fields, the getting bit by insects, like all these things, is something why I do what I'm doing. So this was one of my other explorations, and having this little vehicle there, herding bison with low stress, which is a weird thing. Whoever works with livestock knows that there is a certain way you can approach these animals and they will move in one direction. And for me, going to Colorado and working on this bison range was also about like getting to know something else. How does regeneration or the work in regeneration look like in a different field when you're not at home, when you're not in your these are my grasses area? And I was also meeting the south of France with a shepherd and friend who is working with the sheep in the Cevennes. I mean, whoever has traveled to the southern part of France, to the Cevennes, it's a beautiful area where he works on these hills with his sheep to see if he can bring life to this way, way disturbed landscapes. And landscapes that we think normally, oh, this is beautiful. And then you get into ecological monitoring, you're like, oh no, this is not good. My wife always tells me you can never go back to Ireland because I ruined her Ireland. She's all like, see these hills and see this, and I was like, oh yeah, there's erosion and there is like bare soil and these grasses will not be that short. But it's a lot about like seeing differently, experiencing things differently. And after this beautiful introduction, you know my name, and I could have not introduced myself better. Normally I introduce myself worse than this. But for me, it's all about like, okay, how can we actually go out, feel, experience things, and how can we make sense of this? Holistic management is a part of things that I'm doing. It's an approach of managing differently. I also did permaculture at some point. I also did process workflows optimization at some point. I also did project management at some point. So there's all of these different dots that you're collecting through your life that will bring you with the baby boy with the shepherd on your back into the mountains of the Cevennes and trying to assess, is what he's doing there actually helping the land and the landscape to come back to life or not? Regeneration. We talk about regeneration and we're talking looking for regeneration. And I always like to go back to the actual word, like where is the etymology of a word? And we're talking about the word regenerate, which is basically part of two, like re, meaning this again and again in generare, which I pronounce not Latin but Italian, to produce and to create. So it's about recreating something, redoing something over and over again. So compared to sustainability, which means to uphold at a certain level and keeping it there, we're really trying to emphasize and create processes that build upon each other. So we can do this for a very, very long time, but also actually giving back more than just keeping it as we found it in a way. So that's what we're trying to look into, like what does actually regeneration mean when we're looking at landscapes, when we're looking at lives? And thinking about that meadow you played as a kid, or the walk you did with your friends in the forest, or the swim you took in one of these beautiful main lakes that make Sweden, you always come first from the experience. And when we experience things, we notice so many more things. And then we try to put it into words, and we lose detail, we lose information. So when we experience, we sometimes wouldn't even say like, oh, there was a tingling, or I saw a pattern. We just know things. So every time we come from experience and try to put it into words, explaining it to someone, especially the typical field of the social studies is more like a qualitative approach, like, okay, can you describe this? We lose information, we lose details, we lose quality of what we actually experience. And when we start to put words into numbers, we lose even more of these details. And that is something that we just need to know, because stepping into a field like this, we feel way more. I always say like hay fever is my perfect indicator if this field is diverse or not, because I never get hay fever in a grass and clover field. But what we're trying in ecological monitoring is knowing these gaps, knowing that we as humans really would like to measure things, we really would like to put a number and then know things. And we would really like to, no matter if I go out or you go out in the field, come up with the same assessment, but we need to know that we lose information. And what we're trying to really do is getting it back into this experience, and then as good as we can, like monitor or put down this information into words, and if we have to numbers, but knowing that we're part of a bigger system, knowing that we're always connected to things. So what we do in the next 20, 25 minutes, we'll see, is we start with our journey to be like, hey, okay, what do we need? What do we need on this journey to regeneration in a way, or like just looking for regeneration? We look a bit into then, okay, and how does it work then? Like, how does it look like in practice? We do a little turn back, switch back, and be like, okay, so wait, what was actually regeneration that we started with this regenerator, this recreating things, and end up with where does it leave us? And then hopefully a lot of, wait, I have another question, or I have one more thing from your side. So what do we need? What can you see? What is this? That's always good. Getting okay, frame. That's something with Lego. Yeah. We see colors, we see little Lego dots and frames. And sometimes we have to zoom out to know what it is. And even though we don't have all the details, most of the people are like, oh yeah, I know her. I have not met her personally, but somehow I know what this is. And that is something that we often try to zoom in very, very narrowly if we are going for greenhouse gases like CO2, if we're going for a very rare species that we like, or that someone tells us that we like. And we zoom in very, very much into one detail without forgetting that there's actually a bigger picture and a bigger pattern that we need to look for. That alone, I think, is something that's happening right now a lot, that we're zooming in, because we're trying to find this one thing that will tell us what's wrong, or this one thing, if we fix only this one little bit, everything will be okay. But what we need to remember is that this is a complex system that we're in, a living system, so we always have to zoom out and know everything is connected. One of these Lego tiles does not mean something much except maybe a color. And what we want to do is start to see these pictures, start to see the bigger pictures at work, the bigger patterns. And in the field, when we're going out and doing ecological monitoring, we know that this has something to do with carbon in the ground. And we know that one of us, each of us, has a species, like a really much desired rare species that we would like to see, or would like to see being there a long time. But in the end, what we're doing is trying to look at the broader picture, everything. So we're not just looking at carbon and species, but we're looking at how good is the photosynthesis happening? How good is the soil cover? How is there capping where the water can actually not penetrate the ground? Do we have litter, like dead plant material that is becoming nutrients for the soil life? Do we have soil life? Do we have microorganisms? Like all these different indicators that we're looking for that happen around the soil surface and give us an indication where this landscape, where this field in specific spot we picked right now is currently at. And these are things that you can learn without studying. These are things that I work with farmers most of the time. I don't work with universities or people specialized in a specific field. I work with people on the ground who don't want to learn all like the nerdy details about grass or anything. They need to see the patterns. They need to see Mona Lisa. In a way. They need to be like, oh, okay, if I go over my field and I see mosses here, I see like bare patches here, or see almost specific grasses coming back. Maybe I don't know them by the name, but I kind of recognize them. This is a good sign or a bad sign. So part of it, what we do is really trying to broaden this perspective again. Like, what are all the aspects that we want to look at when we think and talk about regeneration? In regenerative agriculture, but also like in more like the system process that currently at work, we look a lot at lagging indicators. So the lagging indicators is everything that tells me about my past management, carbon in the ground, water infiltration, biodiversity, like how many different species can we actually find. And this information is useful, and it tells us a lot about like what happened in the past, if this was good or bad. And what we're trying to do with this observing on the soil surface, observing these like, okay, I can only go forward. I can only move forward in this. What we're observing and trying to assess is these leading indicators. So things that are happening very quickly, things that I can influence with my management. So me as a farmer, it's good if there's carbon in the soil, but I don't know when and why this happened. And if I have leading indicators that I can change within a season, that tell me in the next season, the next year when I go for monitoring, they already tell me if I'm doing something in the right direction, like in bringing the landscape, the field forward, like this clicker only forward, or not, it helps me actually conduct my management. And then we are happy to have lagging indicators, the latecomers to the party that we can also measure and be like, hey, whoever doesn't believe that these leading indicators will help us really go forward with creating a carbon sink on this grazed field, we can still measure it. But this one is the one that we need when you go to fields with a farmer on your own property, and your grandparents be like, let's look what their cows do, whatever it's going to be. Looking for these help you adjust the management. And that's like the first thing that we need to learn or need to take with us on our journey today is we need these observations and these leading indicators. Overall, we're trying to observe the land through these different processes. So these indicators help us to glimpse into all these ecosystem processes that are happening on the land. In this case, Marietta and Janos are looking like what is happening on his land. So she's advising him just to basically the counter power balance here. And we were looking at like his grazed field and thinking like what can we see? And you might see there is an erosion gully, so there's something happening. You might see the grasses are maybe very short. So it's always trying to look into, or what we need for our regenerative journey is, okay, indicators, and also looking what do the processes on the land actually do at the moment. And one thing is, again, once you have these landscapes and you look at this field overall, looking back at your soil surface, because everything happens at the soil surface that we need to know or that helps us go forward. And we look at these processes, the ecosystem process, through the water cycle perspective. So looking at how well do we think is water penetrated here? How well do we think will the rain actually be used by this field? And indicators like moss can help us to show like, oh, it's not where it's bare ground. It's not where it should be, but it could be this land. Erosion gullies, like everything that we look for, what happens after rainfall? Like, do we have brown streams or does the soil actually stay wet on? So we're looking at process that work, looking at the water cycle. We look at a lot of poop and dung, but also other things where we can get information about the mineral cycle. Like, okay, if we know the water is used, okay, like how are the minerals actually transported back into the soil and from the soil back into the plants? How is this whole soil food web actually working? And again, observing it on the top of the soil surface, we can look at other insects. Is there insect life? Is a dung pad of a cow or a sheep or whatever it is, will this disappear within days, weeks, months, years? Like how good is it going? Like how good are nutrients put back into the soil? Do we have litter? Like that plant material on the top, is it actually composting? So does it actually become nutrients again for the soil? So the second process that we try to observe when we observe the land with these different indicators is after the water cycle, it's looking at the mineral cycle, like how good are actually minerals transported back? And the third one is easily described photosynthesis, but in a process-wise, it's the energy flow. It's like how much photosynthesis is happening in this landscape. How tight are the green plants? How broadleaf are they? How height, like what's their height? How much energy is actually going into the soil at these moments, at this point? And whoever goes out, and when I arrived here yesterday, it's just so much spring here. I'm currently in the northern part of Sweden. It's not north, but it's north of Östersund, so it's still the beginning of north. And there it's still very much delayed. And here, coming here, we know, oh my God, grasses, everything is already so much in life. And then you look at the grasses, and I've been in Germany 2 weeks ago, and you compare the grasses, and you can see that the same species is expressing itself very differently, depending where you are, the water stress and everything. So grasses here might have, I looked at like already really broad leaves and are quite high. The same grasses in a very dry part of Germany are like that small at the moment. And very thin grasses are already going into seed because they're like reproduction. We don't know if there's water still coming. We need to reproduce before we might die or go into dormant. So we look at the energy flow, like how much green energy flow is going into the soil. After we looked at the water cycle and the mineral cycle, and we think like, okay, it's also like actually the energy production from the sun to the ground to then the soil to the plants to us at the end of all. How good is this working? And the fourth one that we need to take onto our journey with us is the community dynamics. And that means how are all animals, plants interacting? Do we have diversity there? Diversity in species? Do we have a diversity in maturity? Do we have young plants and old plants? Do we have trees and shrubs and grasses and forbs and legumes and like all different groups of plants? Can we find them? So we look a lot about diversity at this point and seeing if this place that we monitor is actually thriving in diversity. So we have these four processes like water cycle, mineral cycle, energy flow, and the community dynamics that help us guide our vision. Because we're basically still at the stage of like, what do we actually want to look at? So we come from, I step into this field, or I step into this healthy forest, and I know something is healthy here. to now getting a couple more words. Okay, healthy, what does this healthy feeling, this meadow that I'm standing in mean when I look through a lens of water cycle, a lens of mineral cycle, energy flow or community index? Because that gives me words to describe it. And so maybe we both have actually similar words than to describe things. But at least you ask me a question, I'm like, oh yeah, I noticed this as well. Like someone might be like, hey, what was the energy flow in the field? It's like, oh, I saw all these broad, beautiful green grasses. And I saw they were really dense to each other. And it was really nice to look at. So we need these indicators, and we need to stay in the system thinking part, staying in this Mona Lisa part, staying in this ecosystem processing part, as our first part of the journey that we're on. How do we bring this into practice now? And again, it's about we are talking with people who are working on the ground. I'm talking with people working on the ground, and I've been working the last couple of years on the ground as well myself. And you need to find a way that works in the process, that works in the work that also needs to be done. And a very simple approach, what we do is mostly yearly, doing and monitoring together. And that starts with that we actually make a plan. And we meaning like the farmer, the rancher, the farm team, and for example, me, or they for themselves, and they just do it themselves. And then monitor these leading indicators. So this picture that I saw with the people sitting on the ground, like all these different like litter and capping and diversity and things. Basically, we go through these different indicators side by side by side. Making a plan means picking 10 sites where we do this. If we have 5,000 hectares, we might do 15 sites. But it's not about producing a lot of work. It's more about how many sites, monitoring points, do we need to pick so we get a good idea of what is happening on your land base that you're monitoring, that you're stewarding. Because in the end, a bad monitoring done is better than no monitoring done. And it has to fit into a schedule of someone who has already a lot to do 7 days a week, 365 days per year. So we're making a plan that makes sense for this land base, for the size and the context. Is it all very similar? Is it all similar grazing grounds, all with the same herd? Or do we have changes in geography, in geology? Do we have changes in use? And then make a good plan that can be done easily within 1 day. And then we go out and monitor these indicators. And when I say we, I know I'm faster and I'm also better, maybe. I don't know what that means when I'm alone, but I try always to go with the farmer. Because this is not me saying something about their land. This is me learning together within what we see on the land. And then we can make later sense out of it. Because I'm happy to be there once a year, but I'm more happier if they walk the land with different eyes. Because then hopefully they don't need me anymore. Because that's always my goal, is I want to be the person that you like to call and you like to be there. Maybe have a good chat, but actually want you to be able to do this yourself. So there's no expert here, there's just someone who guides you, maybe on these first steps. It happens, they always call me back, and so I come because they say like, this is the one time a year I can actually walk all my fields with someone who has seen many other fields, it's enjoyable. So basically we make a plan, we go out and monitor together, and then we talk about what happened. So not jumping to a conclusion already when I see something, but actually making sense together about what could have happened here, what could have been the reasons for these things to happen. And then from this, what do we want to see come alive here? What kind of change do we want to see? What kind of things do we want to do differently? Like a farmer might be like, oh, I really would like to have that bare ground covered. A farmer might be like, I really want these birds back. Because as a kid, I really enjoyed having these birds here. Someone might be like, oh, I remember there was a stream at some point, but the stream is not there anymore. So there might be very, very different reasons, and this depends so much on the person and their connection to land and their current context that they're in. What happens next, or what could be a step next for them to do? So it's a lot about calibrating, like where are we, what do we are? Are we in a very dry, brittle area? Are we on a more like humid area? Where are we in the world, basically climate-wise? Can we see patterns when we walk the land? So we have the indicators, but we can also just seeing on the landscape-wise or on the field size, we can already see patterns that the sheep have very much browsed the lower part of the tree, basically. No one clipped it. It was clipped by animals. So maybe there was not enough food in this specific paddock where the animals roamed. And you see a typical like classic horse place where you see like, oh, there's overgrazed grasses and there's very long, big bunches of sorrel. I think, no, it's not sorrel. Docks, it's in English. Rumex, orbital opti for Latin names, but it's a Rumex species. That you can see patterns already when you're stepping into monitoring on the landscape side, on the field side. And then you can see patterns together on a plant individual species, because also now we're zooming into an individual, not wanting this specific individual to be there and great, but this one tells us also about the management that happened, with overgrazing happening. For a longer period of time, the plants are really growing in different areas. Or was it just a very severe grazing that happened? Well, but they left something and there's still clover to see. So we're going basically onto these walks and looking at bigger patterns and then smaller patterns. They go guide our view specifically. And what is always really nice is like when you hear someone say, oh, this is how it is here, this is the land, this is the climate here, I cannot do anything. To help them see like, well, this is the same place, like the same spot in the world at the same day, just I think it was 500 meters apart. And this is the picture that people in that region of Germany always tell me. It's sandy, it's so dry, nothing grows here, we don't have good water retention, I think. And then you take them to a different field, and you're like, but what's happening here? Oh yeah, we don't plow this land. We don't disturb it. And here you find the sand, this very refined sand on the top. When I'm taking the train through Sweden, I see a lot of, not too much sand, but a lot of rocks. Like plowing for rocks. If you want more rocks, plow more. But you see different processes at work. And here you also find the sand, but the sand is 60 centimeters below, because we dig the soil pit there. And we're like, the white sand starts, but it stays there where it was supposed to be. So this is also not to tell someone you're doing wrong or right, or like you should stop plowing. This is just like, oh, we get an indication that the ecosystem processes, the ecosystem health could be like this. And right now you're struggling a lot with this, and you're struggling with using technology and other things to somehow fix it, when there is a chance to fix it maybe differently. And in these conversations, it's like, yeah, like there's no bad tool or good tool. There's no good practice and bad practice. It just depends on the context you're in and what you want to reach with this field, and also what kind of pressure you have on. So you see, we're turning from actually, I'm just coming for ecological monitoring into a whole discussion about how is your life. And I think that is actually the way forward, because all of these practices in regeneration are great, but they need to fit into your context. They need to fit into your life. They need to fit into like, I cannot move the cows around every 6 hours because I have other things to do. I also want to spend some time with my kids. So coming from, I really want to talk about what we see in the field, it always ends up talking about life. And I think that's when we're back to, we have indicators, but we also need to remember we're always in complex systems. And no matter how we want something to be, we need to talk to the other person and see and listen and observe what is actually happening, to decide what forward meaning could be, forward meaning towards health in a way. Trials, also fun. This was a shepherd friend of mine, Leonard. Like, this is the same spot. I just basically took a photo to the left and I took a photo to the right. And the left is like how most of the landscape looks like. And the right is where he kept his sheep for a night. And just by them sleeping there, peeing and donging, suddenly grasses come back. And this is also something I could have not known this. I could have monitored this as like, oh, there's a lot of background and not much species. But encouraging people to do trials tells us something that we don't even know. That tells us something that could be better or could happen on your land. I have been in regional Spain where they don't even believe anymore they could have perennial grasses. They think they can only have annual yearly grasses. Which, like, no, this is not how this world works. But how can we encourage actually these to come back? This is how our report looks in, because we do what we see and experience and then put into words. We put it into numbers because people like numbers. But basically don't stop there. Don't stop with the numbers. But after we come together, put this report, have maybe different years that we can actually then start to compare, because in the first year we're coming, it doesn't mean anything yet, because I don't know where you started. I don't know if this is already better or worse than last year. We can only see what we have this year. But then next year, the year after, we can see if there is a change. We can see if basically the numbers shift, the colors shift. And then we can actually sit together and look at this and be like, okay, what has happened here? And what else do you want it to be? And always like getting the personal, individual, on-site context into it and making priorities. So it actually becomes a change and not just, oh, I need to do another 100 things. No, it's just like one thing or one direction. Like can you leave more grass? Or can you leave more cover? Or can you put something else out? It's like always like looking at these numbers and then together defining what could be next steps that fit into your schedule and in your life. So I already talked a bit about it. So what is actually regeneration? There is an ecological part about it. And that's the fun part, being outside in the rolling hills of Hungary and looking at grasses I have never seen before, clovers I've never seen before, and seeing how happy the cows are. But there's always the other part that we need to take care of, which is finance and economy. Like, how are you embedded in? How are your debts? Did you just did you take out a new loan for a new barn? Because you have 6 months of winter and you need to put your animals somewhere, but that also means you need to produce a lot. And actually your local community is not much, you can't sell, so you would have to transport it to Stockholm or somewhere else. And taking all this into consideration, you have ecological information, but then comes all the how are you doing on the economy side information. That also needs to start fitting together, because often, if you get the ecology good and better, this also gets better. But not just because we want to see this plant, but we want to see you thrive, and see you thriving means these two fit together. And the third part is what farmers asked, like, what's your quality of life? It's like, what do you mean quality of life? That is where the conversations in the end like start, or not start, but like land. Like, what do you actually, why are you here? Why do you do this job? What do you enjoy with this? Or where did the joy got lost? The fun got lost? When are you thriving? Should you really have pigs? Maybe you shouldn't have pigs if you hate pigs, but you love animals. So maybe it's a different species. Maybe it's just a switch from dairy to actually beef production or something else. Maybe it is, I actually just want to have a vegetable garden. Whatever it's going to be, but there is a lot about figuring out why you're here, why you and your family are here, what you want to do. Because if you're not thriving, you're going to be burned out. In 3 years, 5 years, suicide rate in farmers is crazy high. Often also because they're lonely. So there's also this idea like of social reclaims, like how are you connected to your local community? Is the community actually showing up when you need help? One farmer in the south of Germany, where we helped getting hay from like a bigger slope down, she said like 15 years ago, people would see us raking hay and they would show up and come and help. Now no one is helping anymore. And this is not because they're ignorant or something, but maybe they don't know anymore or they lost the connection. So bringing back this relationship is one of these big things, and bringing back quality of life. I remember the first time I told the farmer, so let's try to plan a family holiday for 1 week this year. And you're like, how? But that might be a good start to actually know. We try to, how do we need to change your processes or what's happening in ecology, economy, and everything, so you can actually enjoy your holiday away. What does need to happen to be able to do this? And this might be the change of someone doing this until they're 75, or like quitting in 2 years, or their children not wanting to come back. Because that's the other thing. Do we create the conditions to scare people away? Or do we start creating conditions to actually, people are like, yeah, I want to do this diverse, cool farm in the north of Sweden, or not. So it's about feedback loops. I'll skip over this because I'm already looking at time. So there is these similar concepts of these indicators. We have these ecosystem processes, and a lot of farmers are in completely different contexts, but they have the same similar mental mindset. They know, like, okay, I'm working complexity, and I need to look at these things, and I need to set decisions and priorities to actually thrive in my place. So it's not creating one blueprint. The blueprint is more like the mental model that people have when they actually step into regeneration, and ecological monitoring can one conversation be that actually helps people get into this. Because we're not talking about, oh, you have to learn this, you have to do this. We're just walking the land and see what the ecosystem says, and not what an organic certifier or whoever says, but just you and me walking the land. So where does this leave us? This is where I currently am, in the north, not in the true north, but north of Östersund. I started my journey yesterday at 5:30 a.m. to arrive here at 6 o'clock or something. By train, it's really beautiful. But when I came there, I was always like, oh my gosh, there's so many clear cuts. Why do people still do clear cuts? All the disturbance, all the destruction. And then I drive on the way to the train station, I drive through a village. I can't even remember the village name. We just call it the plow village, because around every house, as much as you can plow, the whole landscape is plowed. And my brain is like, wow, no, why do people not do this? I'll still do this. And that is me again trying to step aside and be like, wait, what is the context here? What is important here? What does regeneration here look like as a first step? And often it's not about telling people, most of the time, it's not about telling people, but it's more about actually listening and observing. Like, okay, what is happening here? Things that we observe in ecological processes, like what's happening on the landscape, like what's happening on the surface. A lot of what I also do is observing what's happening between people. Like, how are the interactions? Is there a community still? Are people isolated in a way? Do they really not know better? Or is it just because they don't know how to change in a way? So first step is a lot about listening, observing when we go out and go into practice and doing things. And that's the second one. The next thing is then that regeneration is actually management. So how can we make better decisions with what we know? Me being in the north right now, being like, okay, how can I connect to people? How can I show up? How can I actually show that I care in a way so that they don't feel alone? One of the farmers told me he just feels alone. He doesn't know. He just does his thing. But he has no one to talk to on a Friday in the barn. For example, so we established the Friday at the drinks at the barn. in a way. And then start with small steps, like how can you actually make better decisions with small steps that take you in a way into a direction that you want to go because it's healthy for you. This one got a little deformed, but it's this part of the end is like it's all about relationships. We have all the information there. We have a lot of things there. And now it's about us rebuilding our relationship with each other, but also with us rebuilding relationships with our landscapes. Because the landscapes really need us and want us to be there. And we basically need to form these communities that we care and are committed to these landscapes to take care of them. No matter if someone tells us that you're organic and unconventional, or you have a tractor and I gave out technology, that does not matter in the end. It matters just like how can we communicate in a way that we want to build this relationship to go forward for the bigger surrounding. And last, we're all experts. It doesn't matter if someone has studied 10 years or worked in the field for 15 years or something. It does bring in more experience, but you all have experience. So that's the thing that I want to end with is like, we are all experts in the way that we have made our experiences. And now it's just basically combining this in a complex system where we don't know the outcome, but really want to build a regenerative future together. And yeah, thank you very much. And I think we have like 5 minutes or something of questions for it.
Amazing. Thank you, Leon. That was great. Hello, sir. That was brilliant. We've got some time for questions. Who's got a question in the audience? And we're recording this, so we're walking around with a microphone.
Don't tell that people.
Thank you for a great presentation. I have a question regarding how does it work in practice? So you mentioned a good plan that can be done within 1 day. What does that mean? Can you give an example?
So when we do the monitoring, we normally do like 10 to 15 sites, monitoring sites, because that gives us the opportunity to finish it within 1 day. So like basically taking about 15 to 20 minutes per site and walking to the next one. Because often what I experience is when working with farmers is 1 day they can manage to carve out of their schedule. If you get like, oh, I need to be here for 3 days, they show up on the first day and then they disappear because they have different things to do. So that's why we always try to make it into like 1 day that you can have a focused conversation and a focused walk together. And if I have to finish something afterwards, because we have to take soil samples, for example, then I can do it myself later. And the other aspect is 1 day is cheaper than 2 days for all of us. So it's again also the financial part that if a farmer has to pay me for 2 days, he might not do it if it's 1 day where he actually walks with me and gets a lot of conversations out of this as well. This might be worth it for them. So that's the only reason why the 1 day.
We had another question.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I was going to ask you like who pays for this assessment, but you said the farmers just now. And I'm also curious, like, what motivates farmers to hire you guys? Like, is it usually part of some incentive scheme, or is it their own initiative, or are they part of like some broader program that encourages regenerative farming?
So different answers. So I in Germany, basically, and in Hungary and in France, they pay me directly. So it's the farmer who wants to know what happens in the land and to use this then in their storytelling. So basically, we think we're doing something right here, but because we have that mental mindset of like, we're always learning, we don't really know, we want someone. Actually, we kind of like you, Leon, because you're not paid by someone else in a way. So there's a lot of like coming directly from farmers who just want to know what's happening on the land and want to improve. There are other models that I've seen, And I've been part of where, for example, the cooperative, like the management part of a dairy cooperative or something, they pay an ecological monitoring and or training to all the farmers because they believe if they understand this and do it, they might stay actually in the business and therefore deliver the milk, etc., etc. And I think I forgot the last part of your question.
No, that was great.
That was great, okay.
But it depends. I also wanted to ask one more thing, if that's okay. I like the work you're describing. I think for me, kind of sounds like a dream job. Like it's really cool and exciting what you're doing. And I'm wondering if you have advice for people that might want to get into this kind of work, might want to do ecological monitoring, work with farmers. Like, what routes are available, or what would you recommend for us?
So I didn't start in agriculture. I don't have a degree in biology or anything. I started as in different administration. So I did classic corporational stuff before, but I was always interested in understanding processes and understanding in different contexts in a way. And I loved to observe people and land and everything, but I also really like to observe people. Just like my wife always tells me, don't tell that people because they become very self-conscious. Anyways, so advice was I was basically just plunging myself in. I was like, I'm really interested in this. I can make this kind of time work. Who's out there where I can be like, hey, I can show up to work with you. I just want to learn. And it was surprising how many farms especially said like, you can come by. And then I basically just dedicated as much time as I could in learning and experiencing. And through that, the next thing opened up, the next thing opened up, the next thing opened up. Like standing here right now, I would never, like corporate Leon would have never ever imagined to be here at this time and doing this work. So it's more like showing up authentically like you are, and with this whole like, hey, don't give me a job, but like I would like to learn from you. Because people like to teach and people like to talk.
Yeah, we got that, Leon. And on that bombshell, no, we could talk to you for hours. We could listen to you for hours talking. Understand? We've got one quick question, and then we're going to give you a really warm round of applause. We're going to thank you later as well.
Yeah.
No.
I'll be here till tonight. So.
Exactly, amazing.
Till my night train.
One last question.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. This is kind of linked to the other question, but so I really enjoyed the part about indicators connecting to the water cycle, energy cycle, and so on. And I'm wondering if, because many times on agroecological farms, like we have in Alnarp, they do a lot of these regenerative practices, but they find it difficult to get it certified or organic, things like organic certifications. So I think this could be a very good step in like measuring what they're actually doing. And in that sense, have you had sort of calls from these kind of farms to help them, get certified for what they're actually doing?
This always depends on the disturbance on the soil surface. So if you are more like in a market gardening setting, different measurements, different indicators might be more interesting. So I normally work with farms who have low disturbance or just once a year disturbance. Either if it's more like a cropping production, mostly it's cropping grazing combined, or classic grazing in orchards, but where there's less constant disturbance on the soil surface. And then, yes, then it makes sense, but then it works with this kind of approach. And I know that in Europe, there's a couple of different directions right now where they're trying to create not another certification, but something that brings together like, oh, we're looking just at the outcomes of the ecosystem health. And we kind of like can put this into, I always say a certificate verification, whatever it is. The work that I'm doing right now, this can be verified by the Savory Institute's program. And then you basically get a report that says you are regenerating your land with the outcomes that we have measured. And this can also then be used as an incentive to sell stuff at a higher price. It can be used as for your own storytelling, whatever it's going to be. But it comes back to the point of building relationships. I've farms that I think are truly regenerative, they have a good embedding to the community. They are known in their 15-kilometer radius around. People come there and they don't care if there's an organic sign or something, or their Demeter or something else. They care because they know you and they know how you produce, and there's a trust. And they know also if you do something weird now, they might go. And you know that they know. So it's a lot about these certificates, these labels, and something. They help us in a disconnected world. And now the question for me is like how to bring people closer. And it could be through such a program of, hey, we are monitoring our land. And this is what it's all. And let me take you on this journey. But in the end, it's about how can we rebuild these relationships where in the end we don't need labels anymore.
I think that's a really good ending. Thank you for the brilliant last question. Yeah, you'll be back here. But I'm going to give the hand to Lisa first.
Yes, and we will soon go to Fika, I promise. But first, and thank you, Leon, by the way, it was amazing. I want to invite Miljömatematiken Sida to quickly introduce their work with the Agroecology Europe Forum that's happening this fall. So, welcome.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Sida, and as Lisa said, I come from Miljömatematik. Closer? Okay. I hope you hear me better now. I'm here. I will keep this really brief because I am, as maybe some of you are really hungry and thirsty for coffee. Thank you, Leon. Okay, I am here because we at Miljömatematik, together with Agroecology Europe Association, SLU, Alva Eco, and the municipality of Malmö, are arranging the Agroecology Europe Forum 2025 this coming autumn, 2nd to 4th of October in Malmö. So, yes. We're really very, very excited. This is a huge opportunity for us to put a focus on Malmö and Sweden and the Nordic countries, and to bring hey, I'm seeing so many faces here, to bring the European agroecology movement here. So we're hoping that during 3 days, Malmö will be like the center of agroecology in all of Europe, and we're hoping that people from outside will also join. We want you to join. So we have brought here, me and my colleague Johan, you can just wave. We are the project coordinators, so we are working a lot, and these are busy times. But we brought this little poster, it's also up there on the back. There's a QR code where you can go in, you can buy your tickets now. We have early bird tickets on sale, and there's a limited availability. So first come, first serve, get your ticket now. There's also a volunteer application, the second QR code. For those of you who would like to be part a little bit more and engaged at the forum, you can apply to become a volunteer. It's open from today and for a month. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to say. You can come talk to me about it if you want to know more. Also on the poster, there's our website for more information. And I hope to see as many of you as possible there in October. Yeah, that's it.
Nice.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, before we go to Fika, there's a lot of before and before. I want to Thomas up on stage, who is responsible for the Fika today, to quickly. Yeah, something about himself and the Fika.
Yes, I'm going to introduce the Fika, which wasn't an introduction, but I'm Thomas. I'm a second-year agroecology student, and I am the person who runs and opened the bakery downstairs in collaboration with the Plant Cafe. And I did it initially. It was for me an academic endeavor. I was a bit concerned about what we were learning and the reality around here. I thought this is the Agriculture University of Sweden, and we can't get anything that's organic, anything that's global within the university or even around. And yeah, I was a bit concerned and a little bit disappointed. The things that you could get at Café were just, very industrial. The restaurants are quite similar. So I proposed, I pitched the idea to the owner of the Café, and then we started working together. And initially, I was a little bit too hopeful. I was gonna use heirloom wheat varieties and old Swedish heritage varieties as well. And I thought, okay, this is gonna be, people at this university are gonna go crazy with this, and they're gonna love it. And once they know that everything is organic, everything is local, their minds are gonna explode. And they did not explode, but. I think after sort of continuing, now it's been almost a year and a half since 2023, end of 2023. Yeah, I continued, and I think people slowly are catching on, and they're slowly sort of seeing that there's the potential to go a different route. Food business can be just like an economic entity, or it can be I think a value-driven entity as well. That we can. For me, it was obviously I was working by myself, and I could take a little bit more risk. Obviously, most of my expenses were ingredients, but I thought that it's if it's possible for me, I'm just one person baking every single day for the Cafés. I think large companies can do it as well. Other bakeries can do it as well. Restaurants can do it as well, and it became very obvious to me that it is possible. And slowly, yeah, I've mentioned consumers briefly because it was mentioned in the last presentation. I was just so shocked that consumers are often very passive when it comes to these decisions. People just would show up and they would just buy regardless of what was there. And I wanted people to ask questions, to ask, where is this wheat from? Where is the sugar from? Where is the cinnamon from? And people just tend to be very passive about this. So I hope you enjoy the fika. Obviously, it's cinnamon buns, and I made some cardamom buns using purple wheat. I hope you like it.
Need a future food system. And the other day I was listening to Donald Hine, who is a social thinker, and he said something that landed very well with me. He said, we are at the end of this system, and we are going to enter into a new system, which gives hope. And hope is something that we also need. So, with that said, there you are. Oh, you can. I guess I manual clicker help. Thank you. I wanted to start a little bit with my regenerative journey, because I think we all have a regenerative journey that starts at one point. Mine started about 8 years ago, when I still lived in California in the US, and I was watching Big Little Farm with my kids. And I thought, this is nice, this is cute, and this is ugly. Why didn't I think about this before? So I've been working in food for the last 10, 12 years. I have a business background as well. I've been working in the big corporations. I've been looking at how can we do business development in the area? How can we make the food system more sustainable? And then for the last 2 years, I'm fully involved in how can we regenerate the food system. So that's where I am right now. And I run an innovation platform that's called Regenerator. And together with my two co-founders, Josephine and Patrick, we're trying to gather the entire food system in Sweden and see how can we make this regenerative.
Available है या क्या?
But before I go more into that, I would like to start with our current food system and see what's actually, because I think we need a little bit of background here. And we also need to understand why are we where we are right now. So we say, or I just said that we are at the end of this current system, and this system started after the Second World War. when the industrialization started. And back then, we had a completely different situation than what we have today. And we tried to do what was good and what we were thinking were the best thing to do back then. And back after the Second World War, the whole Europe were in ruins. And this is, of course, a very European perspective. The whole Europe were in ruins, and there were a lot of famine, and there was a lot of, and we knew that we were going to have a growing population. So we needed to produce a lot of food for a lot of people, and we needed to do that efficiently. So we started to produce a lot of food. And so this is just the graph to give you a little bit of background. Sorry, no, we're too fast. We double click. So, and we became really good at this. So we, over the last 50 years, we become really good at, with the same land use, or more or less the same land use, we have increased production tremendously. And due to this, we can actually feed the growing population that we have in the world. And today we have a situation where we still have people who go to bed hungry, but they are not as many as they were a few generations ago. And we are actually working on that situation. And then, so I went to business school, and in business school, your teachers tell you there is nothing such as free lunches. So everything has a price. And the way that we have been using our land has a very high price on our nature, on our environment. So I went into this regeneration intensive journey looking at the 14% that the agricultural sector has an impact on our climate. The whole food system has 25%. So we are in a business where we actually can make a change, which is positive. If you dig more into the details and look closer to it, you also see that our current food system are creating the biodiversity loss. We use the land in an inappropriate way, and we have a water use that is extensive of what we should do. So that's the consequences of our current food system, and among other things. We also know that we are in a situation where the planetary boundaries are exceeded to a high extent. So we know, and finally, we can add on that as well. If you go to the next slide, thank you. It's not only that the food system is bad for us, for our nature, it's also not doing any good to our bodies. So actually the food system is one of the main reasons for our death. So we know that our current food system has a lot of challenges, and we need to do something differently. So what could then that be? So I'm talking too quickly. But we have all these extreme situations that are coming around in the world, and that we need to face, and that we need to take care of. And with that, we want to. So we are in a food system that was the best at one point, what we knew of. We thought we were doing good. Today we know better, and we want to create a food system that is more robust, more resilient, and can support the increased challenges that we will have in our system. There will be more extreme weather situations, there will be more financial shocks as well in our system in the future. And we know that we need to build something that can take care of all this, and that we need to create a food system that we can actually rebuild on, and that can be there for our future generations. So that's what we want to build for our future. So this is how I kind of see the development of our food system. So we are in a regenerative food system. We are degrading our food system, and that means that we take more energy out of the system than what we put back. This will come to an end. We are not on an endless planet, so we need to kind of figure that one out. We have started, I think I'm there as well, in a sustainable food system, but sustain, as you said, Leon, it's just like to maintain it. And we need to do better, we need to do more. That's why I strongly believe, and that's also something to be said, I strongly believe. I mean, we don't know. Back in the 30s, we thought we're doing right. Right now, I think we're doing right. But we need to be humble in all these decisions. We need to always be able to improve and change, because we don't know. So that's also something to bring into the future, to actually be humble about what is the best solution, and to actually take small steps and be diversified in what we do. That's the risk diversification to actually not only do one thing, but do many different things. So then what I am on a mission, which is really nice. It's really nice to be on a mission and be mission driven. So I'm on a mission to regenerate our food system until 2038. And how are we then, now we come into systems thinking a little bit and how we look at our food system. So in this space, we say this is our mission, and then we need to figure out how do we do to get there. And we have looked at this in a way when we want to tell a story. So now I need to tell you a story. So we are looking at a future where we are not only nourishing, but also rebuilding nature, where farmers are the base of a long-term, holistic and sustainable system. Soil health is the foundation, and diversity is an enabler. And that is through crops. We need diversity everywhere, in the crops, in the processing industry, in the people, and in the entrepreneurship that we're doing. Collaboration is the key. We need to break down the silo thinking and view the food system as an integrated whole. Resilience is the goal. In an uncertain world, we build systems that can stand with challenges. Diversified farms with strong soil health can better resist climate changes and economic shocks. They are future-proofed. Regenerative farms with a deep knowledge, or farmers with a deep knowledge and experience are the architects for this transformation. And Regenerator, our platform, hope to be the catalyst for the change. We want to drive innovation, build partnerships, and pave the way forward, a generative food system. So how do we then do that? So how have we done this process? So this is the map of the players that we see are the most important players around the farmer. And what we realized quite early was that one of the very important players around the farmer is actually his neighbor and other farmers. And this community is to some extent helping, but it's hard to be a front runner and it's hard to be an entrepreneur in this space because it's also quite a judgy space to be in. So, and then if we look at the food system, it's complex. That's the least you can say. And I will not go into all these details, but what we can say is that there is a lot of relations and interconnections all over the system, and the system is closely linked together. So if you start to put in one direction, it will affect a lot of the other partners in the system as well. This is why I strongly believe diversification is a very important word here, because we need to do a lot of different things, test and try. I say I've been in innovation and different other parts of the innovation system before, and it's very similar to this part of the innovation system. It's just very rare that you call a farmer an entrepreneur, even if that's exactly what it is. So, and within this system, we quite early identified 5 areas where we think change is the most important, or where if we change a few things within these areas, we find leverage points where we actually can transform the food system into a more regenerative one. So these and we are doing different activities within the different areas. I think one of the biggest game changers here today is the support system. If we change our support system, which means the governmental support that is given to the farmers, we can actually push the system in a direction or another quite fast. To change the system is not fast, but the output change can become very fast. But it's also very risky, as we don't know what's the right way to push it. We know the wrong way, but we don't know the right direction, exactly the right direction. And this is a massive movement when you do, if we can do this. So what we do here is that we work in a close collaboration with the ARA, which is the European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture. So together with them, we move these questions onwards, because we also think this is an area in the fields. I just finished a project this week where we looked into heirloom grains into industrial bread production in a step to diversify production, because that's another important step. The whole food system is dependent on very few crops and very few animals, and if we want to have a blooming biodiversity, we need something else. That's another thing. And then I want to move into the third area, which is knowledge. Because we are at the knowledge institutions. I wanted to talk about knowledge and knowledge sharing. And looking at knowledge, to farm regeneratively, ask for knowledge from the farmer. All these, like the principles, and that you need to like take into consideration your area and your farm makes the farming more complex. So that's an important part to take in, and we need them to support the farmer in this knowledge, to increase his knowledge, but also to increase the knowledge of the system, because the system doesn't really have this knowledge yet. So if you click a little down, I think you can do one. Yes, thank you. So what we see as important parameters here to achieve this knowledge is, first of all, the peer-to-peer learning between farmers. That the farmers actually get an opportunity to talk to each other. I talked to a farmer in another context the other day, and he said, yeah, when I grew up, my dad and my grandfather, he went to the end of the field during harvest and he talked to his neighbor. Today we bought his land, there is no neighbors. So the farming community, it's much more lonely to be a farmer today than it was in the past. And the peer-to-peer learning that happened naturally, we need to recreate that opportunity. So that's an important part. And then we need to value the practical knowledge as well, because was very, today research is done top down, and we want to push for research from bottom up, so that you actually take the experience from the field, or you validate what's actually happening in the research parameter. And then we need your help as an institution. We need to educate the educators. Because that's also a farmer trust is educated quite a lot, and the educators in the regenerative space are limited today. And I see that you're pushing on this. I think I'm more or less good there. I think that was my last slide. I wanted to talk a little bit on what we're doing. Sorry. So this is what we've been trying to do so far within this learning space. I talked a little bit about the few initiatives, but what we also have done, and this is we're publishing very few days, is we have had, we did a project with 8 of the most prominent coffee farmers in Sweden, where they have been talking to each other, to learn from each other. And we have tried to figure out the technical knowledge. The knowledge that they have out about. So what they do and what we want to absorb so that we can teach others to do the same. So and then we have done an innovation project, which is more like a prototype, where we try to recruit farmers from other institutions than SLE. So we've been at KTH, and we have been at Södertörns folkhögskola to recruit other types of profiles into the farming industry. And we were positively surprised about the interest, because there are a lot of people out there who want to help us and make a more regenerative future food system. So, I can stop there.
Any questions? Here we go.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I was really curious if you could speak a little bit about a note you had on your slide about knowledge access and sharing, and how you have a focus on digitalization and the use of AI. I was just curious about your work with that.
So all this knowledge that we gather from the farmers, we are considering how can we share this in some kind of open form. Because when you have been a little bit on this regenerative journey, you realize that this is an open source information. It doesn't feel right to package it in a closed way. It needs to be open. And we haven't figured it out completely yet, but we have recruited a AI assistant as one of our team members. And hopefully he can help us in this process, because there is a lot of information that needs to get transformed. And of course, we need to figure out how to do it in collaboration with the partners we're working with. But it's an ongoing process, because I think it's a tricky space, but I think there is a lot of pioneering farmers that are very good at taking in new information, but there is a lot of other, like the followers, that we need to help so that we can accelerate their generation as well.
One last question. Yeah, here we go.
As you said, you're using the AI. There was a UN declaration on indigenous knowledge and also benefit sharing. Like, I don't know how you're using that, because they have the rights on their knowledge.
Exactly.
So if you train the AI with their knowledge, it's like contradictory to the UN's declaration.
Yes. No, so that's what I'm saying. We are exploring this area, and we have no clear answers yet.
But I think that's also the nice thing that Leon gave us the overview of holistic thinking, holistic management this morning, and very much on food production. You're taking this to top-down perspective, the whole food systems change, and it's a process that's still ongoing.
Yes.
So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And now we're going to move into a little bit of a different topic. And I have the honor to introduce one of our own agroecology master students that also have been part of the team of planning this day. And between January and March this year, Wilma was in Colombia and collaborating with Biosuroeste on site, conducting a tape analysis and testing a new pilot version of it in collaboration with the FAO. So the focus of the work was to assess the relevance of tape in an emerging agricultural initiative like a living lab, which does not follow the traditional household farm structures. So today, Wilma will share her key insights from this tape analysis and hopefully describe what tape is a little bit. And then we have a short video of the director of Biosuroeste that we will also try to show to all of you. Hopefully the sound and the video works. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, so welcome, Wilma.
Sound first. Is it audible? No. Audible good this time? Is it at a comfortable level? If I speak in a comfortable tone, you think a little up? Is that possible? I would simply mind my volume. So, hello everybody. As Lisa said, my name is Wilma, and I'm part of the students here at the Agroecology Masters program organizing this event. So firstly, in the role of that, I just want to say thank you all for being here and for the diverse support that we have received in organizing this event. Of course, from our funders, Ciani, Asilu Global Partnership, Alnarp, but to everybody who is here today, you're contributing to some extent with your presence and your story. And I can't wait to hear from you in the afternoon session, so I hope you will all be joining for that. And of course, also to our speakers who have been so generous with their time to be here and speak with us today. Now, I think one of the main reasons that I'm on here today and was asked to speak is that the students wanted to share an example of how what we learned during the program can be applied. I noticed a bit of my attention pulling to the microphone. Is the sound still okay in the back, or should I change the microphone? You say it's good. Okay, then I will continue. So, because sometimes as a student, the gap can feel quite large between the studies and these hands-on organizations like the ones our speakers are representing today. Yet there's so much to benefit from exchanging our capacities, because something that organizations inevitably need to show the value of their work is demonstrable results. And demonstrating results, putting it into sometimes more and sometimes less communicable material is what research works with, and it's what we get to learn here as students. And one of these organizations I was very lucky to get to visit this year and contribute to is the Colombian project Biosuroeste. Biosuroeste works to catalyze regenerative rural development. And one of their ways of doing this is working very hands-on with the many phases of agroecology. So this work and the research project I was doing in collaboration with them is what we will talk about here today. And as Lisa said, I'm not presenting alone, but we have a video from Federico, who is the director of Biosuroeste, and I will warn in advance for the people participating on Zoom. When we share a video over to Zoom, then there is a certain lag of the image. So that will be a case, but hopefully us here in the room will get to see the video when it's full. And Federico is here in the Zoom room from Southwest Antioquia, where it's currently 4:20 a.m. But since it's rainy season, the internet connection in Tennessee has been quite unstable. We're providing you with the video, but it might be available to answer some questions. Not yet.
Hello, everyone.
Not yet. No, because I wanted to start by sharing a bit about my experience of this region. Southwest Antioquia in Colombia. It's about 3.5 hours south of Medellin. And there's a strong presence of farming in this region, and agroecological farming, which most people would just call traditional farming without applying the word agroecology necessarily. And there are strong campesino and social movements together with a strong agricultural identity. And in one of the political meets that I got to participate in when I visited Tamesis was the governor of the region and the environmental minister of the national government came to speak to this very small mountain town about land use. And there was lots of frustration and lots of differences in opinion. But something I really took from speaking to people in this region was that people of this region felt that they had a voice and that their stories mattered. And through this, the presence and the impact of the agroecological movements were very noticeable and demonstrable. So while we won't go too much into details, we're really hoping to provide you a glimpse of the agroecological presence and emergence happening in this tropical Andean region, of which Biosuroeste is an example, as well as a platform to tie this network together. And we're also hoping to provide an example of how these research methods and techniques that we learn here in our master's program might help support this type of emergence. And this is done through presenting my research project, which I also did in collaboration with the FAO, Food and Agricultural Organizations. So now I would like to give a word to our video. It's a short introduction of Biosuroeste's work, and then we will return to talk about the research project I was doing in this study visit.
Hello, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be with you. My name is Federico B.J, and I am the leader of Biosuroeste. Biosuroeste is a living park at service of rural development and is taking root on a 600-hectare site in a bioregion shaped by the mighty Cauca River in Colombia, in the heart of the tropical Andes. This is a territory once marked by narco-trafficking and violence, which we are now transforming into a lighthouse of hope and progress through a living systems approach. We recognize the vital role of businesses in generating development, and our role is to create the conditions for that development to support the health of the living systems we are working with. Growth and development are central characteristics of life. The revolutionary and profound question we are asking ourselves is, what kind of development? And our answer is a development that places life at the center of everything of what we do. And to answer that question, we are starting from place, with the unique essence of this bioregion, and we are working with its potential, responding to what is emerging. Our model is structured around 3 lighthouses that respond to the emerging opportunities with a market-oriented approach. These are tourism, lighthouse, agroecology, and bioeconomy. Within our agroecology lighthouse, we run two productive systems, an agroforestry with cacao as the main crop and a regenerative livestock system, both rooted in the ecological and cultural richness of our territory. These living systems are showing that it is possible to be both productive and profitable by working with live poles and potential. And from these systems, we are collaborating with individuals, families, researchers, and businesses to build their creative confidence and agency so we can all take part in the care of the whole. That's why we were thrilled to welcome Wilma and support her research that is helping us to translate through science the work we are doing on the field. So let's dive into her findings. Hello, everyone.
Great. Thank you. So this message about development that places life at the center, it's pretty strong, and the images to me are really stunning. And I guarantee that the real-life visit would offer this as a full sensory experience and together with solid Colombian coffee, so you would not regret going. So, to the context of my research project. The park of Biosuroeste, this 600 hectare space that it's taking place on, it's relatively newly started, and their agroecological production systems that Federico mentioned, and I'll talk more about, have just had one production cycle, so that's about 1.5 years. This means that while I've been visiting them, they've been in a pretty urgent position of looking for indicators and methodologies that could help translate their practice into research, into demonstrable, communicable material, that is. So figures, formulations, methodologies that can help encompass, explain, and justify these many layers of intended benefit from these regeneration initiatives, or demonstrate what is not working. So this was the Biosuroeste context that I stepped into. And meanwhile, my school, SLU, where we are right now, had just signed a memorandum of understanding with the FAO, Food and Agricultural Organizations of the United Nations, with a particular interest in collaborating on agroecology. And as some of you in here might know, the FAO have developed a tool for evaluating agroecology and food production systems. And this tool is called TAPE, Tool for Agroecology Performance Evaluation. And this is a globally used tool. It has a wide network of users, and it's a tool that we get to learn the basics of as agroecology students in our master's program. So this memorandum of understanding meant that SLU got to send me to Biosuroeste to try out TAPE. And I was also in contact with the developer of TAPE, who provided me with a new updated version of the method that I got to try and provide feedback on. So the research aim was twofold, both to evaluate usages of TAPE for Biosuroeste, as they were looking for evaluation indicators, as well as provide feedback on the development of TAPE for the FAO. And to do this, I tested both the old version and the new version of TAPE on the agroecological production systems of Biosuroeste. And then I hosted a participatory evaluation with Biosuroeste on the process of using TAPE and what they think it might be useful for. This is a map of Biosuroeste, and the agroecological production systems that I tested the method on is then one cattle operation of about 12 hectares and one agroforestry system of 2 hectares, put together as one food production system. And the sizes of these, just to mention, are very intentional to mimic the general size of a family farm in this bioregional context. And they're also developed to focus on produce that are relevant for markets that already exist. So they're meant to generate market-appropriate agroecological responses to the economic and ecological reality of this bioregion. And this is part of my results that have gotten a little messed up from the translating the PowerPoint, but we will work with them anyway, and I will try to explain what might be interesting without going too much into technicalities.
This part of tape that's showing here is designed around the 10 elements of agroecology that some of you might have be familiar with, that the FAO have discerned in an earlier phase of their work on agroecology. And one of them was not applicable, so it's only 9 here. And these elements are meant to encompass a broad spectrum of sustainability dimensions, and not just environment and economy, for instance, but social values and governance, presence of social movements within the region. So the result is also dependent on your context. And the line is meant to show the estimated degree of agroecological transition for the studied production system. So that is the production systems of Biosuroeste. And the result is gained from a semi-structured interview and participatory survey with Biosuroeste. So without knowing too much about this method, and even with the figures a bit cross each other, this figure is somewhat easy to follow, right? You see the lines are pretty much filling out the space, reaching close to 100% on most elements. And this indicates a high degree of agroecological transition for Biosuroeste. So the way I see it, this type of figure can be seen as a communication tool. It's been taken out through using a globally tested and applied method, which means that this figure can be used for communication and comparison on a global scale. Federico has called it a tool for global conversations, both in proximity with allies and stakeholders, as well as internationally and with policymakers both on local and international levels. It also helps to pinpoint where different efforts can be placed. Here, the background is missing on the slide. Yeah. Okay, we will work with that. So they're bordering on ideal scoring. So for me, this shows that tape might be too rudimentary for Biosuroeste to use it as an evaluation indicator to measure the future progress of their own production systems. But it is a tool that they could use to help map the region and measure changes that have come from training programs with farmers in the region, for instance. And that this mapping could then be part of a global network of radar diagrams that, of course, will never reflect the full encompassing reality of what's happening in a place. But it's still a useful tool, which is relatively flexible, adaptable to context, and also a very important detail. It's a tool that's developed to directly inform policymakers. Now, the conclusions and main feedback for the FAO was that for this tool to stay relevant and provide depth of results, it also needs to prioritize being flexible to context. And this could be done, for instance, through adding context-specific indicators. Then at the same time, we wouldn't want these to compromise comparability on the global scale. So this is a challenge and a potential trade-off. Yes. So this was a short extract of the work I was doing with Biosuroeste, and this was just a short research internship. It wasn't a thesis, it's nothing too advanced, but it's still a way to put into practice what we learned here in the program that could possibly prove quite useful to the organizations that we work with. Now, transitioning us to the ending of this talk, the topic we landed on for this talk is translating practice into research, because we wanted to show that this type of emergence is already happening, whether research keeps up or not. It's largely happening from the ground up, from smallholders, campesinos, small businesses, multi-stakeholders organizations like Biosuroeste. And agroecology is what we might call this set of principles or characteristics that we can identify to connect this emergence to research and to a global conversation. And I'm sure Biosuroeste can testify it's very difficult to find measurable indicators that encapsulate these many layers of intention and purpose and to translate action into demonstrable results. So this is really a place where we as researchers or students can be of service and support. That's what I wanted to say. And hopefully to convey to you just a glimpse of this agroecology magic happening in this region of the world. Thank you.
I was mesmerized by all the photos. I want to go there now. Any questions? Lorraine?
Hi, thank you for a nice presentation. I'm so curious. I'm wondering if you might there be more detail, obviously, in your project, but how did you measure, like, this is 90%,
Yeah.
100%, and
Yeah.
that was things?
Thank you for asking that question. I left out the details of how tape is performed because it wasn't part of this attempt to show exactly the methodology, but it's a very important question to actually verify the results. So tape is performed through a participatory survey and interview, and within the old official version of tape, you have each of these elements. If we go back to the slide. Each of these elements have about four possible grading criteria, 4 possible indexes for grading, and you grade on a scale of 1 to 4. And in the new version of tape that I got to test, the 2025 trial version that they're working on and will likely launch somewhat soon, all of these indexes had been divided into 4 more. So rather than being a total of 36 sub-criteria, it's 100 sub-criteria. So this particular model is taken out through the averages of, on each element, the average of 16 scores, possible scoring points that are related to resilience. So in recycling, for instance, it could be how much material on site is recycled, and 4 would be all of the material. Yes, so the score is taken out from an average of the scoring on the participatory survey.
Great, and everyone who's got questions, they can come to you the whole day, right?
Yes.
When you do those.
Certainly.
Amazing. I'm handing over to Lisa.
Yes. Nice to see some agroecology master students as well on the stage, not just me. And now we'll move on to our last speaker of this morning session. And it's a little bit of a different topic again, and we're so excited to have you here today. And our next speaker and final speaker of the morning is Samuel, and he's the founder of Koastal. And Koastal is a seaweed farming initiative that supports the transition of fisheries to sustainable seaweed production. It helps fishers set up, operate, and scale seaweed farms, while also aggregating and certifying their production to meet the needs of large-scale buyers. And based along the archipelago of Western Sweden and Eastern Denmark, Koastal connects agroecology with aquatic ecosystems, leveraging the expertise of local farmers who are knowledgeable about the waters. And today he will be talking about scaling regenerative aquaculture with fisheries. And welcome.
Sweet.
Does this work? Hey.
Yay.
Always you can try. Good. Welcome. So many beautiful faces here. I'm quite scared because the speakers before in front of me were set the bar quite high, so just bear with me. But today, in the coming 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I will talk about what we're doing at Koastal. But before, work straight. Before I really get into the seaweed, I will tell you a bit about where we started. So our journey starts. Just continue or different. Top and look at this. Our journey starts in Lund, where I studied the Master of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And during that master, I played around a lot with the concept of seaweed farming and how we not can make the same mistakes as the land-based agriculture did. Really build it from the ground up as a healthy system. And we played a lot around with the concept of a network of seaweed farms, but it was always a lot of pivoting and a lot of high-level thinking. We didn't really get our hands dirty. But everything changed after a good summer break, meeting my co-founder Trygve, and especially meeting a fisher, Göran, in a local bar in Bucher, which is a different story. But all to say that Göran is a very typical fisher. He learned fishing from his father and the father and his grandfather before him. Focuses on passive small-scale fishing, owns his own boat, very independent, as it should. But unfortunately, Göran and a lot of his colleagues are facing more and more pressure, decreasing quota stocks or fish stocks, therefore quotas, more and more cost, and therefore he and his colleagues are typically during the winter often needing to look for a land-based job, a truck driver, a contractor, whatever, to really make sure that they continue to feed their family. And that's quite sad, because at the end of the day, they want to work on the water, they want to run their boat, and that's what they're good at. When we approached Göran with the idea and we realized the potential of seaweed cultivation, he puts his trust on us and says, guys, let's work together for 1 year. He was very specific. 1 year, I'll give you a chance, and then we'll see how it goes from there. But that's what we did. We got our hands dirty, and in September 2022, we somehow got a permit. We begged suppliers for some small-scale equipment, and we seeded our first farm. Throughout the winter months, we monitored it together with Göran, and actually, then in April 2022, we harvested, surprisingly, some seaweed. We helped him, he knew some fishmongers, and he brought some seaweed to the auction for direct sales, which has a nice margin. But the majority of the seaweed we took from him, and we tried for him to get it to the market. So we arranged that he could put it in the fish boxes that he typically uses to put his fish, and he delivered it to the freezer. So before I continue the story and how it went from there, I will quickly take a side step and talk a bit more about seaweed, because I'm absolutely obsessed about seaweed, but I can imagine that that's not the entire, or the case for everybody here. And in the coming 2 to 3 minutes, I will just try to get as many on board as possible. Seaweed can be seen as one of the most regenerative forms of agriculture. It is, what is it? It is very healthy for to grow, meaning that by growing it, you combat problems like ocean eutrophication, acidification, and just decline in marine habitats. It's also very efficient, so we don't use any fresh water, no fertilizers, not a lot of arable land, all elements that are quite rare these days and only will become more rarer. But also it can be used for a dozen interesting applications. It can be used for food, feed, biomaterials, cosmetics, a large array of things, but fundamentally it's just a very exciting raw material. But the problem is that it's expensive to produce. Producing things at an industrial scale, it's really cutthroat economics, and that's also definitely the case for seaweed cultivation. It's very seasonal, so we seed in September and harvest in April. So all these operations, but all therefore risks and revenue, are very packed on these timelines. Scaling, especially if you go offshore, which is a different topic, things are expensive. Since it's so seasonal, getting a good return on investment is not the easiest thing. Because if you, for example, invest in a harvesting vessel, you can only use it for 2 or 3 weeks a year. So really to get that full return is a tough thing. And then just working on water is not, it's not enjoyable. Things are waves, things happen, and so on. So inspired by what is happening on land, thinking about networks, which on one hand touches associations, cooperatives, franchises, the positive elements about contract farming. We were inspired by that, and we believe that that is also necessary to really make the seaweed business case work. And that's what we started working on, which we call the network approach. And fundamentally, what we believe is that every part of the value chain should be done by the person who does it the best. The fisher should work on the water. The person driving the fish already in a cold chain to the new part of the value chain should also drive the seaweed. All to say is that we should facilitate the local stakeholders, build on the existing infrastructure to make this industry healthy and cost efficient. And our role is to focus on the seaweed-specific elements. So we are quite spread out throughout the entire value chain, working with permits and what is unique about seaweed there, but also very much going to the product quality and seeing, okay, what does an inventory manager of a fishing facility needs to know when storing seaweed. The benefits of network is that we focus a lot on standardization. The more people are involved in the network, the more things are standardized and the more efficient everything becomes. And you just leverage the scale of the network. Concretely, because this is high level, concretely what that means is that we continue with our mission. Believe it or not, for a network, you need more than one farm. So that's also the first task. We onboarded new farmers. We, for example, worked on how can we decrease the cost, the capex of a farm, making it more efficient cultivation systems. Economics of scale, bigger supply tenders, both in equipment and seedlings, also doing all the practical work, the negotiations, the logistics of getting it to Sweden. Farmer to farmer education, okay, what worked on this farm? This farmer thought this was a good technique. Why was that a good technique? Why not? Just a lot of, okay, how do you maintain a farm? What is good seaweed looking like? Better operation systems in general. Just helping everybody understand what it takes to cultivate seaweed. When it comes to the cold chain, for example, here you can see the boxes of crayfish. This is a community-owned freezer, or a cooler, I should say. So next to the fish boxes, they put now also the seaweed boxes, meaning that we don't need to invest in new coolings, new value chains. And we really work on the standardization to make it a really industrial industry and to move away from the niche that we're doing now. Continuing with certification, transparency, standardization, authority, documents, and leveraging market as access. Farmer to farmer education is very much what we focus on best, because in the first years we were a bit experts and we taught fishers how to farm, but quickly we are competed by the fishers themselves. We say, yeah guys, but you from your office say this, but actually guys, this is what has been working, so let us take over from you, which we love. Similar to Leon, we're like we love about that day on the boat, but actually our vision is that we shouldn't. This is a bit more a visual representation of our what we say the network model. We are very involved in the establishment of the farms, helping them find the best design and equipment, getting the permits and also site selection. The farmer knows like nobody else how to work on the water, and then we do all the mess after. So this is a bit the story for the farmer itself, and not too much high in the value chain. We started in Sweden, now also in Denmark. Hopefully later this year we can get our first farmers in Iceland on board. We're having high-level conversations as that goes with Ireland, but we will see where the winds take us to as many places as possible, hopefully. So that is a bit what we've been doing for the past 3 years, getting our hands dirty on seaweed. I'm very honored that I got invited here because I have a diverse background, but agroecology is not a part of it. So for me, it was like, okay, so are we doing the right thing here? Especially in a room full of experts, that's quite a tricky thing to say. But actually, all my research, I feel that we were somewhat doing the right thing because we work a lot on resource efficiency. How can we make things more efficient? And then not just by pressuring more the land, or in our case, the sea, just like putting nutrients into the sea to make the seaweed grow quicker, but do it in a smart, long-term way, taking cooperation instead of competition, working together, economics of scale, standardization, resilient market access, where since we can negotiate just to give an example, since we can negotiate the market access, suppliers or buyers from us know, okay, coastal sourced from quite some farms, if one of these farms fail, they will have buffering capacity. Whereas if they would source from one individual massive farm, if that farm fails, they have a bigger problem. Here, I'm going to stay here for the rest of the afternoon, but if you as expert, please tell me where you think we can work more, how we can be even more inspired by the existing knowledge from the agricultural world, and how we should move forward, not to make the same mistakes. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I'm closing in. three things that really help me a lot is getting yourself dirty. I'm quite proud of myself that some of these are in line with what Liam has been saying, but get out there. The best way to learn is to be a part of the system instead of trying to, from a high level, analyze the system. Keep things simple and cheap. Simplicity is key. I think nature or biology is such a black box that the best way to learn is just try to analyze the dynamics instead of just sitting there. And thinking scale. I'm very much, although industrial often is connected to like quite negative elements, I think really that's where the big problems are happening, and therefore also where small changes, but the more small changes happen, the bigger the impact can be towards a more healthy supply chain. So with that, I thank you a lot, and I look forward to spending the afternoon with you.
How can we not be enthusiastic about seaweed after regeneration from Sara? I've known them for 3 years and I'm very happy that you're still as enthusiastic as they want. Any questions? You've told them everything.
There you go. I love seaweed. Great. Because I got to know seaweed when I was in Japan. It was like just 20 years ago. So it's amazing. I had one thought, because of the pollution of the oceans, and especially the Baltic Sea and everything, and which we have in fish. Do you know anything how this connects to seaweed? Because if seaweed did not get the pollution, then it would be like such a, even like a booster compared to all we do on land, but on the sea as well. It'd be like, hey, this is also helping the ocean or the waters, and it's healthier for you.
So, I'm again speaking a bit outside of my expertise, but I was told that the big problem about the heavy metals is that it's stored in fat, which is a big problem for fish, but not a big problem for seaweed. So therefore, to a short answer to your question is that the big problem from that we see in fish from the Baltic shouldn't be a problem with seaweed. In theory, the perception is a bigger problem because we actually have a permit and equipment ready in Stockholm. So we want to start there because the potential and the problems are very significant. Yeah, often the questions that are raised are like, okay, but we should really test this thoroughly year after year to make sure that these problems don't arise, and that the perception of heavy metal or food from the Baltic is toxic, that we can change that, especially for seaweed.
Especially calling it sea lettuce, as one of your documents said, is amazing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, my question is related to the later part of your work, but from the buyback and onwards, the markets that you connect to. Maybe you could speak a little bit about those.
So here, what we were again quite lazy. So what we want to do is we want to create a raw form of biomass, which is stable, which means that we can store it for up to 12 months. And then we're actually satisfied. We don't focus too much on food markets, feed markets, or something like that, because we believe that the network should just perform high quality, resilient, and cost efficient biomass. And then the market will take it from there. We're maybe less as our investors, which want working on like, okay, where is seaweed gonna happen? Where is gonna be used at the big scale? Because that's still a big problem into the value chain or in the industry. Like, okay, where is that nice product market fit? But we more want to be the player. Like, okay, we make a calculated guess that it will be used somewhere. Yeah. We will be the people that can produce it on a healthy way, in a healthy system, towards these bigger markets.
One last question.
Sure.
Yes, hello, I'm from Folkeuniversitetet, and we have education for blue food. And I was with my students in Bucher, looking at Sotenäs Synergy Center, looking at the rest streams. And I'm thinking like coastal, depending on what kind of seaweed you are growing, sometimes you have rest streams. And I was thinking about diversifying the income sources. Could you maybe take some of the rest streams, for example, I spoke with the Skåne, they take waste and turn it into district heating, and they turn it into biochar. And there we have a chance of, we've been polluting the oceans with all kinds of, what happens on land ends up in the ocean. If we could take it back again and improve our soils and, the carbon capture and all that stuff. I've been thinking about those things as well, like system thinking, like
quite a lot. It's funny that you raise that specific municipality, because Bucher, where we started, is I think like 5 minutes away from the Sötnas Center. And actually, I think in a couple of weeks I have a meeting with the biggest investor in the biogas plant that they run there. It has tremendous potential. I think the volumes that we're talking about are not really relevant yet for that case. But we do have biomass, like waste streams that we cannot easily get rid of. Also on our farms, they tend to become mussel farms quite quickly, which is something I hate because it's a very big problem. But anyway, we need to take these mussels up and use them. So we're definitely thinking on it. But for now, the volumes that you need to fill a gas plant or to a fermentation plant are not where we are yet. But the idea is there, and as you say, tremendous potential.
Another warm round of applause for Sara.